Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. How are we doing? Welcome. I am currently crying inside. I'm crying inside. I had these, and I decided not to swing it. I decided to be smart. Smart is what I decided to be. Smart. Why is that smart? Damn it. Yeah, I think it would have been. It could have been close to a six-figure day, man. So what if today? The what if is in my head. So I got to get that out of my head. Got to get the what ifs out of my head today. Hopefully, oh, there it goes. Trade's over. 110. Wow. Yeah, wow. Aklo, what a move lower. Sexy. Congratulations, Tanya. Saw Tanya ticket last night. I'm sure some other people you got it in there. Man, what a trade. What a low volume, nothing support area to just abuse, as I like to say. So, yeah, it is what it is. Could have gone the other way as true golf. I decided to take it off and take some win and be smart. And hopefully today some opportunity on the intraday, but man, does it hurt a little bit to look at that. But a lot of opportunities out there today, hopefully. Hopefully some... I can't stop looking at it. Hopefully some nice downside trade action, some interesting action post-GDP. Hopefully some moves are left for us on the intraday, which I'm sure they will be. Hopefully it's not all here in the pre-market. But congratulations, anyone with some put swings. Really nice. Google going through the low volume area. Broadcom has a big gap below that I'm watching. Palantir under 172 or 178 is interesting today. So there's some big opportunities out there. I just hope that they're not all gone by the open. Hopefully we can find some new entry points and look for that downside continuation. But there's a chance, right, that the downside, could be all these volume gaps could be filled before the open. We'll see what GDP does, see how the market reacts to it, but hopefully we can find something out there. But, got to get the what if out of my mind so far today. That's been sort of haunting me all morning, watching Aklo go straight down. Just such a textbook setup, and I'll talk about it today. But let's see where else, right? The name of the game in a market like we're currently seeing, which is slightly shifting. We've seen some lower highs come in, some break and retest rejections. The name of the game is to find the names that have ran up ridiculous and look for them to come back to reality. Aklo is one of those. It's coming back to reality this morning before the market opens, and there's probably some others out there that, you can find that have ran up crazy, and there's definitely low volume gaps, straight up, straight down type action. That's the name of the game today. So retest rejections, that's what I'm going to be looking for. It's clear that the market has slightly shifted. This is a good example of how you don't need to try to, guess a top. We have seen the last 2 days clearly shift to the downside. We have clearly seen a change in the price action. You just have to adjust to it. So very clear adjustment today. And let's see what we can get. So let's get started. Press that like button, subscribe to the channel. Here we go. So, Aklo. Ouch. Let me get some lights on here. Awesome trade. Awesome downside. Let's review this to start the day. Let's start it differently today. Let's just run into this. Let's see. Let me break down why. Oh, Alexa's talking to me. All right. Did I say that? Did I say the A word there? So why is this such an interesting opportunity? Why was this such a good trade? And, maybe even warrants doing some swing trading. My God, what is going on here? Holy crap. Oh, man. Okay, liquidation here, folks. So, why is this such a good opportunity? Well, you can see here, first of all, when you look at this 4-hour chart, right, there is literally nothing between this low and this high. It is just a straight up 4-hour candle, right? And so there is just zero support there if you start slipping under these levels. And you can see that once you failed underneath this low right here around 132.35, and you put that as a rejection point, that was it, right? You had a potential to hold this 123 low, which got sliced right through, and under that you have nothing, right? This is that straight up, straight down move we always talk about. If you're gonna look for straight up, if you're gonna get straight up, no good deed is left unpunished, or no good deed goes unpunished, right? That's what we sort of talked about the other day. This is a good deed, right? We love this. Aklo straight up 40% in a day, which is just ridiculous. And no good deed goes unpunished, right? Straight up, straight down. There it is. The trade's over, to be quite honest, right? 110 is where the trade is done. So it's going to be now even dangerous to look for Aklo downside to start the day. Maybe there's more under 110. I hope we get a bounce here, but this high right here around that Thursday high at 110, that trade is over, right? That was the target to fill in this upside. And so you can see we're starting to bounce off that 110 level a little bit, and I would probably no longer even be interested in this trade. It would need to come right back up to this 123 here and then do a little retest rejection. That would be the only way to really get interested now. Could be very dangerous. Could be very dangerous to try to short into this drop, this major drop. So we'll talk about it in more detail, but that one hurts today. Let's get into some key levels. Today we do have GDP, so let's be aware of that. GDP here in the pre-market. We'll see what that does for the market. What has the market done the last 2 days? The last 2 days it is identical. We have seen the same thing happen 2 days in a row on the NASDAQ futures. We've gotten a pre-market upside and then a early morning to intraday downside. So yesterday we had that drop, or Tuesday we had that drop, right? We had that pre-market upside into the previous low and the breakdown point, and we had a break and retest rejection, right? Look at what's happening today. We break this low, we break this high, we break these lows here, we have a break and retest rejection, right? So this is a clear market shift. This is a change in market structure. This is a change in the behavior of the market, and this is very clearly a reason to adapt, right? And to look differently at what we're trading. Very clear, very obvious, and this shows you, right, that you don't need to catch the exact top. All you had to do over the last 2 days is realize, hey, we're no longer making higher lows and higher highs. We're now making lower highs and lower lows, right? And so this is very interesting. Now, today, with how much downside we have in the pre-market, there could be a situation that today we just sort of grind higher, right? And late shorts sort of get punished. We do need to understand that. There is, during downside moves, there are days where you just sort of grind higher and it just sets up the next day's downside, right? So if the market holds, let's say, our FOMC high here at 24,550, which is that NASDAQ FOMC high, and we just sort of, trap late shorts this morning and just sort of grind higher all day, right? That is a very real possibility. However, anything that is under now this supply high is weak, right? Anything that does not reclaim this 24,780 to 24,816, any move higher into this level is not a bullish move, right? You need now strong reclaims. You have to reclaim key levels. So this is now a rejection point. This is very clearly, if we push higher into this level, this could very clearly be that area that fades once again, right? So I am not trusting long setups today unless you get above this 24,816. That is my key spot. If you can reclaim that level and turn this back into support, then you can possibly look for that, long action once again on a reclaim of that Thursday high, reclaim of Tuesday's lows, reclaim back above this after hour pre-market high here. That's a must. If you don't get that, every pop is a potential fading move. This is the retest rejection, and this is a change in the market right now, and you need to pay attention to it. Now, here on the NASDAQ futures, we can see that we have this high right here. See this high from that Tuesday? We've been focused on that high. That was this low right here. Look at us trading under it. That's where the market bounced yesterday, by the way. All right? Look at where the market bounced yesterday. Right there, which was right here and was right here. Now, if this level and this level and this level turn into rejections today, you're going to continue lower. All right? You cannot see fails under this level here, which you are currently trading below. And so I'll have to change that to red, before the market opens, because if we're trading below that, that is now a rejection point. So 24,627 to 24,650 area, which is this high in yesterday's lows. If we turn that into a failure point, you are going lower. Next level would be the FOMC high here at 24,550. Underneath the FOMC high at 24,550, you have nothing until 24,400. This is all FOMC volatility right here. This is from the Wednesday of last week, right? Straight down, straight up. This is all FOMC volatility right there. So if you see a failure below the FOMC highs today, I think you could definitely see an aggressive downside move to 24,400. And guess where you're probably headed into if this market continues to stay weak? What have we been talking about? The extension over the daily 20 and how the market always comes back to the daily 20 after an extension period. Look at where that daily 20 is, right here. That's the yellow zone that we've had on our charts for a very long time. 24,300, 24,280. We've had this golden zone here on the NASDAQ for weeks, and this could very well be your target, right? Daily 20s here, previous major highs are here. We might need to see that pullback to that key level. That's still very, very possible. That happens if we fail under the FOMC high. Right there, right there. You'll go to the 300, and if your momentum's strong, you're probably going to see that daily 20. So that's what I'm watching today. But the key of today is to see whether we reject yesterday's lows. That's going to be the key of the day. Do we reclaim or do we reject yesterday's lows? If we reclaim yesterday's lows, there is a possibility to be trapped on the short side. You do not want to be short if you see a strong reclaim back above yesterday's lows. Would I look to long that trade? I'm not sure, because I don't think that technically is a very strong long. It could be, right? You could definitely look to do a little reclaim and ripper up towards that 24,780. That's very possible, right? For just a little bit of a consolidation back inside the range type of trade. So some things to look for today, right? Very clear. Let's see what FOMC or let's see what GDP has to say. QQQ. Nice rejections of our 600 spot. Yesterday, if you paid attention on the live stream, we talked about how you need to decide what happens at 600. Are you going to get the bear flag that creates downside, or are you going to get the reclaim and hold back above? Well, what happened was the rejection, right? Rejection, left shoulder, right shoulder. There's your head. Really nice example of a head and shoulder formation. I mean, pretty much perfect. Breaking the neckline, and today turning the neckline into a failure point. That is pretty damn nice. So really clean there right now on the QQQ. And now what I would be looking for is the 594 rejection. That is this previous high. And if you now turn 594 into a failure point today, that is downside continuation. Now the lows of yesterday are slightly lower just because you had a little bit of a NASDAQ sweep of the lows, which you guys know NASDAQ is trailer park trash, pretty much. You know what we say, the trailer park NASDAQ, which is just, it likes to not, it's not pretty. It sometimes sweeps those levels. It gets a little sloppy near key levels. It goes a little bit past them, right? So the exact low of day is right there at 593.36. So I would be watching that, but I would say that anywhere south of this high at 594 is a potential failure point today. If you reclaim 594, if you get back above that 594 level, then you just sort of navigate back within this range. And you do a little reclaim rip, and then you sort of pop back into that 598, and then you probably just sort of sit inside this zone, right? Shout out Case, that's right. Downside FOMC highs, 592. You break that, you're going gap fill. We've had this gap fill charted on the QQQ for a few days now, and we can see that that is possibly what you're looking for today. The gap fill is right here at 590. This low, it starts under this low here, and that is where that gap has started to come in. 593 actually is where that gap starts. You're sort of sitting right at it right now, aren't you? 593. Yeah, you're sort of sitting right at the gap fill. So if you reject, if you fail underneath that FOMC high, technically you would be in that gap, and that would be down to your gap fill at 590, right? That's what I would be looking for. So let's go back to this QQQ for a second. Take a look at this. Failing the FOMC high right here would definitely bring you into your gap fill. So that's a 2-point QQQ downside move, which is a gap right here from the overnight session. Underneath 590, you are trading into the 588, which is right here. And under that, you go down to FOMC lows, which is also your daily 20 SMA. Okay? The risk today, okay? The possible risk to the short side. The spot that's going to mess you up if you are too aggressive to the short side is if you reclaim yesterday's lows, right? If you get this to just sort of hold today, that's going to lock out the short side. You do not want to see this reclaim. If it does, you're gonna have to sort of take it easy on the short side, because you might need it to come back up and then short it back at supply. If you reclaim yesterday's lows, that is very important. You need to watch out for yesterday's lows. If that reclaims, be careful on the short side. I would prefer a bounce to fade into. And so what could be nice today is GDP gives us a little fake pop, and then we find that new short, right? That could be something to look for. I would not want to be short. Again, for those that don't listen but come back to the live stream and talk shit in the comments, because there's plenty of you, I know, right? You're waiting for it. You're waiting for me to say something so that you can come back on the live stream later at 10 o'clock and talk to me in hindsight. I love when that happens. You do not want to be short if you reclaim yesterday's lows. That is the risk. If you hold back above this low, it is potentially going to mess up the short side today. Something like this, right? And then you just sort of sit here inside of this area, and then it sort of just never gives you another move to the downside. That is very possible. Be Pro, appreciate that, brother. Thank you for the donation. All right, ES. So where did ES just go to? It looks like it has gone to our 66.62 demand. This level has been on our charts, and it looks like that's exactly where we're bouncing today. So what is the now rejection spot? FOMC high is now the rejection spot, actually. And that Monday, and okay, this is, let me put on PDL. So previous, yeah, it's right in between this 66.81 and this 66.76. Right here. That's the zone now. So right here, these highs, FOMC high, these lows, these lows, these lows, yesterday's lows. If you push into this and fail it, that is your look, right? That continues the lower high, the lower low, the lower high, the lower low, the lower high, the lower low. You'd want it to be right inside this zone there, right? That's the lower high, I'm sorry. So lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, and this would be your lower low and your lower high, right? That's what you'd want to see form if you want to get further downside. If you reclaim yesterday's lows, right? Same concept. If you reclaim this low and this low, right? If you reclaim this area right here, that is where the short side gets dangerous, because at that point, you may need to see this push higher and come back to the 6,700 before the next potential fade comes in. So you do not want to get trapped short if you get back above the previous day low. That is very important. Appreciate that, Golf Nut. Thank you, brother. You are under FOMC highs, which is important on the S&P 500. If you break underneath this high right here at 66.56, you likely come straight down to 66.40. And if the momentum's strong, you're probably coming down to the daily 20 and 66.20 area. But it is all about watching yesterday's lows on the market. That is what the most important level of the day is. So what's yesterday's lows on the SPY? Yesterday's lows on the SPY, 659.67 right here, right? Look at this right here. I'm actually just going to change the color. 659.67. That is previous day low, PDL, right? Right there. And if you make that right there, right, you can see that that is the level that you do not want to see reclaim today. That is the level you want to see reject. Between there and I would say this high right here, which is 659.11. If you turn that area into a failure, that is your let's continue lower move, right? That's what you'd want to see. Underneath those lows, turn it into failures right here, turn it into a rejection point, and continue to the downside. If you reclaim yesterday's lows and hold above them, then you are at risk of this channeling and staying sideways today. Possibly moving back into this 662 supply, right? That is where you do not want to see if you want to be short. If you reject the 660, 659, 660 previous day low area, you are going to come right here down to that 657 and that FOMC low. And if you break that, you're down into the daily 20 SMA, right? Same exact thing. Appreciate that. NXHNO. I'm going to say that's Nico, maybe? Maybe that's a cool way to say Nico. I don't know. But I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, very nice stuff today. Very clean levels to look at. Very clear spot to look at, right? Not just a level, but a spot, right? Previous day lows on everything. SPY, ES, QQQ, NASDAQ. What happens at PDL, right? That is huge. That's what you need to be paying attention to, okay? All right. IWM failed that high. Very nice. We talked about the failure of that high, giving you a move back to 241. It looks like 241 has now broken in the pre-market. And if I can see a now retest rejection of 241 today, I think that would be a money trade. These highs, retest, rejection, fail back under some major highs here. That would be sick. If you rejected that, I would target back down to the daily 20 around 239. Right, that's a nice little setup right there today. SMH, this is massive. Why is this massive? Right here, daily chart, big gap, right? Does the SMH fill this gap? I would say there is a very high chance of this filling a gap. SMH is not a just ridiculous straight up type of ETF, right? It doesn't typically do these large gap ups, which it has done. And this is out of the ordinary for SMH. So what do you think the likelihood what do you think the likelihood is here? Probably that it fills this gap, right? This is a little bit too extended, and this gap up was actually on, if I'm not mistaken, it was before this, but I remember part of it was because of that NVIDIA news that came out, right? That NVIDIA news that, guess what? NVIDIA has given back the entire move, right? So that's very interesting. I remember TSM was also a driver of that straight up gap, right? It was right here. That gap up on TSM was also a driver of that move. So if NVIDIA and TSM are starting to give back that move, then what do we think that the SMH is going to do? I would say it's going to give back that move. And so this is a laser focus of mine today. The gap fill starts underneath 312.60, right there. Under that, technically the gap fill is at 305. Which, guess what, would also line up with, you guessed it, the daily 20 SMA, right? So every sign is leading towards a daily 20 SMA pullback to me. And that would be where I'm looking to see what happens. Now, if we get under 312.60, I would definitely look to get aggressive on some SMH downside moves. You can see right here that we are failing under this previous high. If this previous high rejects today, then I would be looking to see if that continues lower to the gap fill level and then possibly under it, right? Very interesting. We'll have to see if this fails, though. If this reclaims, that's your risk, right? There is a risk to the short side. And again, I will reiterate this for those that think I'm saying just short the open. That is not correct. You need to see the previous day lows turn into a rejection point. It is a must. Because if you short this too early into this hole and you get squeezed on, that is because this did not reject. It's because it came back up and reclaimed. Right? That is what you need to pay attention to today. Okay, that's that. Moving on, Tesla. So last night I was thinking, right, such a weird night, right? Last night was such a weird night. Because last night I saw Tesla going straight up. And I said, man, I wish I held some Tesla longs. And then I'm seeing Akko go down. And I said, man, I wish I held some Akko shorts, right? So such a weird, last night was just sort of strange looking at the market overnight. And today, now I'm very happy I decided to not take that risk, right? So, you know, things always, you know, there's going to be times where you wish you held something overnight, and like Aklo, and then there's going to be situations like this where you're popping champagne in the after hours because you're in some Tesla longs, and then bam, you wake up and you're like, what the hell happened, right? So the correct answer seems to always be, don't do that much risk on the overnight, right? Just take it a little bit easy on the swing trades when there's some uncertainties in the market. And, you know, I guess I'm pretty happy that I did that now that I think about it, right? That's probably the right call. Who knows, right? Akko could have held one of those levels and squeezed to the upside like it's been doing. And I would have been in a lot of pain this morning. So hopefully, right, some opportunities on the intraday present themselves. Now, for Tesla, when we look at this, that was a big push into 450 supply, and it got pretty heavily rejected. And guess what it is doing? It is failing back under 441, which is pretty nasty, right? Don't really like that. You're failing back under 441, which is right here, and look at the rejection at 441 this morning. So what would I look for today? I would look for this to pop and fade. Right, that would be my watch. Can Tesla pop back into the 441, and can it fade? That's something that I would be looking for. Pullback, I would say it could hold anywhere between this 436 to 434 zone, but right here you can see, look at these previous highs, major previous highs, right here, right here, right here. Look at this low right here. Eunice! U.S. deployed jets against Russian bombers. Oh, interesting. Okay. That's interesting news this morning. Appreciate that, Eunice. Thank you, man. Eunice is going to fund the entire coffee business. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much, man. I hope that it's coming from a place of, you know, I hope that this money is coming from a place of profitability in your trading. That's all I can hope. I appreciate that. Why do you level the gap at the wick and not the open? For SMH margin, let me see what your I guess you could put it at the open margin. I just would always want to include that low of day, right? Because what if you look at your short at the open and then it holds that low of day, right, margin? So that would be where I'd be a little bit concerned, right? I wouldn't want to short the open level and then hold that low a day. And then I lose because I didn't incorporate that low a day wick, right? So that's why I do it. If it breaks under that wick low, the exact lowest point of that day, then I would consider that in the gap. Personally. And then you could for this one, for the low, I'm having this as a technical gap fill. That is technically the full gap fill. But I definitely would be watching this high at 308.67 because that's not so much the gap fill, but that is the highest point. That is the closest point to price action, right? This is the closest point to any potential price action, right? So technically the gap fill is here at the close of this candle. But I would be cautious that it could just hold the closest point of some price action, which is the high of this day here at 308.67. Maybe it just sort of holds that high and then bounces, right? So I'm a little bit cautious on that. Is Akko still going down? Is it holding 110? Okay, yeah. I mean, trade's over. That was the target. Okay. But yeah, that's why margin. Hopefully that makes sense. Eunice, once again, thank you, brother. Thank you so much. All right, so Talked about Tesla. 434 would be the target. Watch out for that support. Underneath this 434 zone, you're going to come right back down to 428. Could be a nice watch today. Nvidia. I don't really like Nvidia today. Too much chop here, guys, for me. You just have a lot of shit going on over here, right? You have lows. You have a bunch of these lows here. You got a bunch of lows here. You got some previous highs right here. There's just too much noise in here for me. So I'm not really going to get too interested in Nvidia today. I'm just going to watch that SMH more than anything. Okay, we got GDP data. What do we got? GDP 3.8 versus 3.3. So GDP is higher than expectations. How's the market react to it? Let's see. Hopefully not down, because then this day is just gone. Hopefully up. Put it up so we can fade it. Okay. It's holding. Worst case scenario, this drops. Then you really got to be careful what you do today, because then this trade is just sort of gone. It looks like it's going to drop. Let's see what happens in this zone, man. We'll see. But GDP higher than expected. It is rejecting previous day lows as we speak, right? Look at the previous day lows turning into... This is the trade you wanted intraday. Right here. This is the trade you want intraday. Rejection of previous day low. That's what you're getting right now in the pre-market. Let's see. All right, let's continue. AMD, big fade of that exact 164.50 level again, which is wild. What another beautiful rejection of that high. Underneath 155 is where I think you could... Hamish, thank you, brother. Underneath 155, I think you could get more downside. That is somewhere that I'm watching today. Under 155. MU, one of my more interesting downside moves on semiconductors today, if we do stay weak, that would be right here. A failure of the previous all-time high level at 160. These highs right here, these highs right here, these lows right here, and then right there. If you can see this stay as a rejection point, I would look to target the 155, and then really what I would look to target is down here at 150. So I'm watching to see if MU stays weak under the 160 level. That's very interesting to me. Broadcom. Big gap below on Broadcom. This is a very interesting watch today, my friends. Here is Broadcom, and you have a major gap to fill underneath 331.42. We've been looking at this one. We were talking about the daily 20 SMA hold, but right now I'm not interested in that with the market, the current market trend, right? I would be more interested to see if the gap fill is what is needed if the market continues to do what it's doing. Underneath 331.42, you have nothing but a gap into this price action here at 317. Full gap fill would be 308.78. So big watch here on Broadcom, 331.42. That's definitely interesting today. All right. Apple. Apple, we've been waiting for that pullback to 250. However, I'm not sure I'm interested in the long at 250 unless we see the market change directions. Apple 250 is a major previous high here. If I look to the left, you can see previous highs right here, 250. If you fail back under that 250, that's a little bit of a straight up move there, wouldn't you say, on Apple, right? That's a little bit of a straight up move on Apple there. So if you drop under 250, you have this low of this day at 248, and under that, you have a gap, right here. So you have a gap to fill between 248, which I'm going to make blue, but I'm going to put gap below, gap below, between 248.12 and 246.30, which are those daily lows and highs. You have a gap right there. And so that could be sort of interesting. Something that you could definitely pay attention to today. It's a little tight, so I'm not sure how interesting it is, but you got your 250 retest. If that breaks, you probably go down to that 248.12. Under that, you got a gap to fill at 246.30. That could be interesting to watch, and you can see right now, Apple is actually failing the exact level you don't want to see it fail if you're long, which is this low, these lows, and look at that failure right there. Pretty damn nice. So, something to watch there. Amazon. Reason I'm bringing up Amazon today, which is something I have not been typically watching, is because of how big this level is. This is a huge level to hold on Amazon. It's very important for Amazon. You can see right here, Amazon has underperformed for the last entire week of downside. You can see these major previous highs at 218, 219, previous highs, previous lows, previous low, right? Previous rejection right here. Look at what's up. Look what else is right there. The daily 100 SMA. Amazon is one of the few tech stocks at the daily 100. That is very, very low. There's not many tech stocks that are sitting at their daily 100 right now. This is one of them. So if we break underneath that 219, 218, underneath that daily 100, you're going to see that 200 SMA get tested at 215. And you also have to know that this is a very possible hold level as well. So it goes both ways. But I would be interested to see if we do break below that 219 today and back under that daily 100. That is sort of interesting. Not much on Meta today. It's sitting inside the same channel. Really, for me, Meta would only be a trade if it lost this 745 level. So I would just set an alert below that. Below that, you probably get some weakness, but you could definitely see some holds come in there. But Meta's just been sort of sloppy in here. I'm not too interested. Google. It did it. It sure as hell did it, man. This is what we were talking about. If you guys remember on Google, we were sort of targeting that straight up move, and eventually we knew it would happen, but unfortunately it's happening in the after hours. So that sort of sucks. We've been targeting this straight up move from around 242 to around 248. This was a 6-point straight up move on Google, and look at how it's coming straight down now, right? That is our straight up, straight down. That is our no good deed goes unpunished, right? That's our new term right there. Straight up, straight down, right? That's how it works. So under 248, you go to 242. That's probably where you're headed on Google. Google has a gap to fill underneath the 244.98. You can see right here, there is a gap to fill from 244.98 to 242. And you can see that is exactly where Google is starting to break as we speak, and likely heads back to that 242, right? Unfortunately, that trade is starting to be done because the risk reward is now starting to flip because this level is likely to hold at 242, and I would be cautious of that bouncing off that level. So we will have to see how that shows up today. Palantir. Oh, come on, man. Everything's just sort of gone. Palantir underneath 177. This low, underneath that. We saw the rejection of it and the downside coming in. Straight up, straight down, right? Straight up, straight down. And here it comes straight down. Where's the level that we're looking for pullbacks on Palantir? I would be interested, and I think you have to stay interested in the Palantir long at 172, but we'll have to see what the market shows. KX Ziggy. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, Palantir, the short definitely stops at 172. That's where you could definitely find some kind of a bounce, right? That is a big retest level here, and I would be careful of being short at 172. What would you want to see here? You'd want to see a bounce and a fade, right? You'd want to see a bounce back into 178 or 177 and a rejection play at 177. That's what you'd want to see. Are you going to get it? I don't know. If you fail under 172, then you could re-look for a short, right? A failure below this 172 could result in a further downside move for sure. So something to watch there as well. Hood going quickly underneath the 125. You can see we failed back under 125, and it looks like you're going to head down to this 122 zone. That might be gone by the open. Yeah, and it's going to be really hard to short into 122. If you fail that 121 spot, then maybe more into the 118. But this is starting to get, sort of shot down. I would want a pop and fade, right? The pop and fade is really what you want to see on a lot of these names. Aklo trades over. The only other trade that I would look for Aklo today is a failure under this high, which is 110.82. If we get a clean failure below that 110.82 spot, then maybe there is more, right? That would be the only spot for more downside on Aklo. Underneath this high right here, if we can see a failure below that, then I'd say a fail into 103. Under that, back into these highs at 98. But, man, do you have to be careful of being on the wrong side of this one. If this thing wants to fill this gap back to 123, that's a 13-point move that you do not want to be short in. So, going to have to be a little bit careful on good old Aklo today on that. If this holds that 110 previous high and sort of wants to do a little bit of a retracement for another short back here, then that's where you'd really want to be short back at these previous breakdown points. Nico, NXHNO. I'm going to call you Nexno. Nexhno. Whatever that is, thank you, man. Appreciate that. Thanks for joining the coffee fund. So 110.82 is this previous high, and that's where you got to be careful today. Okay. Reddit, sort of interesting here because Reddit is failing back under potentially this weekly high, and that would be very important, my friends. So let me get that exact weekly high for you. Back under this weekly high is no bueno for Reddit, and it actually is under it right now. So take a look at this. Look at that right there. 230.41, major weekly high that created downside. 230.41. Look at where Reddit is failing right now as we speak. 230.41, right? That is very much a potential failure point, and I would be looking to see if Reddit stays under that. If we look at the hourly chart, we can see that that was the previous level that held Reddit higher. Right here and right here. Look at that failure now right there. So I would look for that fail underneath 231.40. That could be very interesting today. Nano. All right, Nano. Good to know. Nano. Got it. 230.41. UNH, looking to see if UNH can hold this 346 level today. I took a little one contract October swing on this, looking to see if we can get that bigger picture long, but with the market flipping, I might take a little loss on this one. We'll see what happens. 346 is the must hold. I would actually look to flip my position here to downside if you failed 346 today. That could be very interesting. I would watch that as well. CRWV under 125 could be a breakdown spot right here. 125 were these major highs. Look at it holding here. If we now flip this back to the downside under 123 or 125, that is interesting. IONQ is another one that's been a hot runner and sort of straight up. And look at this right here at 71. 71, 71, 71, 71. That became a rejection into a support. And look at what's happening today. If this turns back into a rejection, that's going lower. Okay, that is going to be it, I believe. NBIS is sort of interesting. I have an alert under 105. But today, my focus is the stocks that have gone straight up and where is the straight down. Some of it's probably gone. I'm going to be watching ACO 110.82. I'm going to be watching that Google gap fill to 242. I'm going to be watching that Palantir back to 172. Hopefully it's not gone by the open. Definitely going to be watching that Broadcom gap fill underneath 331.42. That SMH gap fill underneath 312.60. And definitely sort of interested in that MU downside under 160 today. Of course, once again, you have to watch what happens at previous day low, which is clearly already becoming a massive failure point. Look at that. It's already gone. There it is. Break and retest, previous day low, smackdown. So now you're watching that again. You know, you're going to have to still watch that level, but that's already rejected, so that's already happening. If TOS would let me zoom in. 24,550, NASDAQ or FOMC highs. ES, 66.56. SPY, smackdown at 659. That's going right to 657 there, it looks like. ES, that's in that zone. QQQ, yeah, QQQ under FOMC highs, 591.79. You probably go to your gap fill. That could be a nice watch today. The gap fill on Qs. All right, guys. Well, looks like we are going to see some potentially exciting downside action. I hope that you're ready for it because the downside is some sexy stuff to trade, and I hope that you find some opportunities today. Once again, please don't, try not to FOMO into it this morning. The best case scenario, my friends, for you, if you want to look short, is a pop and fade. It is always a pop and fade. It is a low volume, shitty bounce that you look to fade into rather than just shorting the open. I hope that we don't just get straight downside today. I hope that there's an opportunity somewhere. And OSCL, Oracle. Is there a gap here? OFA. Yeah, I forgot about this one. Okay. 291.75. That's going to be your gap fill. Wow, yeah, we got to pay attention to that today. Damn, margin. Good call. Good call. Yeah. Yeah, great call, actually. Underneath this low, 291.75. You got probably daily 20 SMA as your target there. All right, I'm going to keep watching that one on watch. Good call, margin. All right, guys, I hope you have a fantastic trading day. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace and love.